Good morning, everyone, or afternoon or evening, depending upon where you are in the world. And welcome to the webinar about WaStop, holding back the flood and protecting against flooding in many parts of the world. This webinar is going to be about installations, WaStop installed in various different parts of the world, just taking a look at different applications and different types of installations. It's not going to be a technical product session about WaStop. We have other webinars for that. Please join our website to have a look. But this is just focusing on installations around the world. So, having said that, first off, what is a WaStop? A WaStop is a non-return inline check valve that is used to stop backflow in stormwater and sewer applications. I'll show you an animation about how the WaStop functions. There we go. So, a WaStop is slid inside an existing pipe and then bolted onto the wall, whether it be into a chamber or into an outfall structure. Once it's bolted in place, the valve works instantly, allowing flow to go through the valve by building up a pressure before releasing that flow. And then when the flow drops down to the closing pressure point, the valve will close. And it's completely closed against backflow, whether it's from odour or from stormwater or sewer or whatever you have trying to come back in the other direction. Standard valves take up to 5 meters of back pressure. We can do up to 8 meters of back pressure if required. The valve still opens underwater if you have a submerged application. The membrane will pop open and allow that flow through so long as you have a higher upstream pressure than downstream pressure. That pulsating flow helps keep your pipes cleaner both upstream and downstream over the 20-year life expectancy of the valve. We do different configurations, both with the installation type you saw in the animation, but also with the flange application. We can do, installation. The flanges we can do in many different shapes and sizes and configurations, just depending upon what you need. And the valve can also be installed in reverse. So if you're going into a chamber, it can either go on the inlet side or the outlet side of the chamber. So that was a quick run through of how the valve actually works. So how about we have a look at where it is installed. WaStop have been installed all over the world. The dots on this map represent, some of them are a few of the actual installations, but a lot of them are dots representing partners that we work with in the many different countries that we sell WaStop. So in Australia and New Zealand, for example, we sell through high-grade water. Are the dots there, whereas some of the dots that you see over in the US and Europe, it's where we're active ourselves. We've got over 55,000 installations around the world, so that would be an awful lot of dots on the map if we were to put them all on there. But let's start the journey by going to USA. I thought we would start on the east coast of the USA because on the east coast there is a lot of problems with flooding, partly due to the low low elevation of the land in Florida, for example, and partly due to storm surges that they do get in regularly here, and also due to the king tide events that come in and inundate the stormwater system. So to zoom in a little bit more on this particular area, I think we'll head into Miami Beach. Now in Miami Beach, they have what they call sunny day flooding. And sunny day flooding is when they're getting water on the streets when there is no rainfall event. So as you can see the pictures on the left here, they're showing flooding, but it hasn't rained here for quite some time. That flooding is simply saltwater, seawater that has come up through the stormwater systems and inundated those stormwater systems and then flown back up onto the roads. And to combat this during king tide events, what they were doing previous to the WaStop installations was they were installing these, as you can see in the picture on the right, hopefully, you can see these little black blow-up plugs. So they would literally go out and install these black blow-up plugs into the outfall of the chamber. And that would stop the water coming in. However, they would then have to go and remove these blow-up plugs again to be able to allow the stormwater to go out during a rainfall event. So it was a very a bit of a time waster, basically, and very resource demanding. So what they did there was install 220 odd WaStop valves in various different applications. And because they couldn't get access to the actual seawall, they were getting the WaStops to go down inside the chambers and install on either the inlet or the outlet of the chamber, depending upon what was required there. Made it a very, very simple installation and completely stopped the sunny day flooding in those areas. We did another interesting application in Miami Beach as well, where they had a slightly different problem. The problem there was that the groundwater system would push down onto the, sorry, I'll just come back to this, push down onto, so the tidal king tides would push down onto the groundwater table, and that would push it back out through the stormwater system, because what they had there is a groundwater recharge system. So when the stormwater is collected into the system, it should go down these vertical wells into the groundwater system to recharge it. However, during a king tide event, this is what their chambers look like. So that's water coming back up from the groundwater system into the stormwater system and filling up their stormwater system, so that would then come back up onto the roads and cause flooding. So that was an easy installation for us to do, but it was a vertical one. So instead of putting the WaStop in the normal horizontal manner, you would drop it down into the vertical well, and with the flange on it there, you just bolt it back into the existing well that they had, and with a trash rack cover over the top of it to stop any trash going down into the groundwater system. It's a very simple installation, and it was done very, very quickly. And the alternative to this would be a pumping station to be able to pump the water out of there when it is coming out, which is obviously expensive, not just to do, but also in ongoing maintenance and so on. So just up the road from Miami, there's a place called St. Augustine. Now, St. Augustine is the oldest continually lived-in city in the US. It was founded by the Spanish in 1565 and have been largely unscathed by flooding throughout their history, and they have an amazing amount of cultural buildings or heritage buildings in the city. So it's a beautiful, beautiful city. However, with rising tides and storm surges, they've been finding that water is finding its way up onto the streets and inundating these amazing buildings, causing damage to the infrastructure. So during the last major event in 2016, there was a hurricane called Matthew that came through and just caused an awful lot of damage in that area. Jessica Beach, the city engineer, was tasked with coming up with a way to stop this flooding, or as much of it as she possibly could. Anyway, the flooding coming up through the stormwater system. So Jessica went through and she identified a whole bunch of points that needed to be rectified in order to stop that water coming up on the streets. As you can see in the picture on the left here, this is a place that we did an installation, but the picture on the left is prior to the installation, and the picture on the right is post-installation during the same type of king tide event. So the valve in the middle there, as most WaStops are installed into existing infrastructure, they're designed to be slightly smaller on the OD of our pipe than what a standard concrete or ductile iron or plastic pipe is, so that they slide into place and are just bolted on. So an amazing result just by installing a number of valves throughout the city to protect these buildings. Another one of the applications we did in St. Augustine was this one. This is me climbing out on the railing here to be able to try and get a measurement of the pipe, so that we had something rough to go off. It was quite a muddy area and difficult to get to. But when we actually got the measurement and got the valve, this is what the installation looked like. I was glad that I wasn't standing waist deep in water like this guy is. But he literally slid the valve into the pipe, which was a difficult installation because the wall is actually slanting on two angles here. It's slanting sort of vertically like that, but also horizontally. So it would have been a difficult installation to have a flange or anything on it. So this particular installation pushed the WaStop all the way back in, used non-shrinking grout around the WaStop, and bolted back up into the existing concrete. So simple, fairly easy to put in, and that's a big pipe, so it's a 60-inch pipe, so it's stopping a lot of water going back in the opposite direction. From St. Augustine, we'll head over to Fort Lauderdale, and I love this one. This guy, he's so excited about putting the WaStop in. You can see the big smile on his face. These ones were just small valves going into PVC pipe. So once again, just being able to slide into that PVC pipe, and then they actually tapped it back onto the pipe to hold it into place there. The advantage of doing installations like this is it's fairly easy if you do need to take the valve out for any reason, just unbolt it and pull it out. But with a 20-year life expectancy and very low maintenance on the valves, you don't need to pull them in and out. In Fort Lauderdale, we did a large number of installations, and we're still doing a large number of installations there, replacing flap valves and failed duct bills as well. So where they've gone into existing infrastructure, found that there's a flap valve or a duct bill installed, simply removing that and then being able to put the WaStop inside the pipe makes for a very easy installation. So Lynn Burnett in Anna Maria Island, she looked at what had happened in Fort Lauderdale, and she also looked at what had happened in St. Augustine and Miami Beach. And when she was tasked with doing a project for Anna Maria Island to stop the flooding there, she had understood the way things had worked in those different places and how that would help her tackling the flooding in Anna Maria. Now, the WaStop valves were just a part of her plan here. She also did a whole lot of upgrades to the actual system and upgrades to the way the water was being able to be permeated down through the soil and the hard surface areas into the stormwater system. A lot of nice shelly areas and walkways and so on to be able to let that water down. But Lynn did a large number of installations throughout Anna Maria Island, protecting these homes from flooding. And you can see one of the installations here, a lot of head walls, so the valves just slid into these head walls and the stormwater outfalls. And it not only protected backflow from going up onto the island, but it also meant that without that backflow up onto the island, you're not pulling those heavy metals and pollutants from the roads and so on back into the sea again. It's just a lovely fishing area around there. So that was a really good installation, or set of installations by Lynn Burnett there. So to depart now from these warmer places and head somewhere a little colder, we're going to whip up to Canada and have a look at some applications in Ontario. This first one here is one that I am working on right at the moment, the City of Kingston. As you can see, they have a gate valve in there which is kind of rusted and not functioning anymore. So it is not stopping backflow, as you can see by the fish in the chamber. Not particularly beautiful. The St. Clair River, I believe it is on the outside of this, and this is allowing the stormwater to come out through this chamber and out into the St. Clair River, but obviously wanting the St. Clair River not to come back up into the system. So very shortly there'll be a WaStop valve in this installation, in this particular application, to stop these fish getting into the chamber. I don't think it would smell particularly good in there. So going to Hamilton in Ontario, Canada, this application, I was there and took that photo on the left there. It was freezing cold with ice all over the rocks there, as you can see. But Ontario is obviously not on the sea, but they do get a lot of storms, and they're pretty big lakes, and they also do get higher lake levels seasonally in the spring and in the autumn. So this particular application, there was problems with rocks coming into the system from the lake. But also, once you get these rocks into the system, the rainwater is therefore not able to get out through the pipe and through the valve. Prior to the valve being in there, get out and go into the lake. But with the WaStop in there, it stops the rocks going into the system, and therefore they have the retention in the whole system for the storm water, for the rain to be able to collect. And then build up that pulsating flow and push out through the valve. Without the valve in here, they were going out and maintaining this at least once a month, digging out the stones out of this chamber, as you can see in the center picture there. They had a payback term of just 1 year after installing this valve because of not needing to go out and maintain it, and also not needing to go out and pump when that rainwater couldn't get out of the system. So a very good installation, and just shows the versatility of the WaStop. I mentioned earlier about changing out some flap valves. This is one that we did in the city of Brantford, Ontario. And the flap valve on the left-hand side there that you can see, flap valve's been around since, I think, 25 AD. So they're a great invention, really, really good for protecting against backflow in areas where it's not going to cause a whole lot of damage, material damage or damage to people or their property. In this particular flap valve, it was getting twigs and branches and things stuck in it, so it wasn't able to close properly. And when it couldn't close properly and the river level rose up, it would push that water back up and start inundating homes. And the homes were actually quite low behind that area there. So that's not good. So very easy to pull out the pull out the flap valve and push the WaStop in. And then with the low head loss of the WaStop, it allows a large amount of water to come through. So when they do get a good rainfall event, that water can just flush through. This film here, it's not at full flow right here. It's at a fairly good flow, but it's not at full flow. But it's showing that membrane just sort of adapts to whatever water's coming through it. So to move on from Ontario, we're going to head somewhere slightly warmer again. We're going to head over to the South Pacific. We'll start off in New Zealand. In this application, let's talk about being knee-deep in mud. This application is to protect water from coming back up during high tide events, pretty much any really high tide event and king tide events, coming up and flooding the motorway that's just quite close to this area here. And flooding on the motorway is a bit of a problem in New Zealand. We don't have a whole lot of motorways, and the roading around Auckland does get very congested. So this was an essential installation. It had to happen pretty quickly because it's a tidal area. As you can see, the picture on the left is at low tide, and obviously they're pumping out what's left in there to be able to get the valve in, and the picture on the right is at high tide. So they definitely didn't want to be in there installing at high tide. Now, this installation is slightly different because it is actually 3 valves installed in one head wall. You can see the head wall on the left here. It is got a hole that is slightly odd shaped, and that is to be able to accommodate the 1 meter valve that is in the bottom of it, and then the 2 smaller 200 millimeter valves. Now, the smaller valves are to allow out the rainfall events, even if the tide is up and the opening pressure of the larger valve hasn't been hit yet. But it's also in there because, as you can see in this picture here, it's an extremely muddy area, and they're just wanting to make sure they get as much flow out of there as possible to be able to keep all that mud and silt flowing. And with the smaller valves on the top there, even if it's a high tide event and it is rainfall, they'll still shoot the water out so that that motorway doesn't get flooded, which is pretty essential, as I said there. So I'm damaged by my work, but I do think that picture on the left is kind of pretty. So from there, let's head over to somewhere even more beautiful and warmer, Fiji. Beautiful place here, amazing resort, but the problems they were having was 3 of their resort rooms were getting problems from flooding during king tide events or high tide events. And these king and high tide events, they were pushing the water up so that it was coming over the edge in towards these 3. They've got like resort rooms there, and these 3 rooms were getting inundated, and this was really not good when there were people there, and it's not good when there's not people there because the damage to the place is quite expensive, obviously. So they wanted to put in 3 valves to stop this flooding in those particular places, and after the installation, there was, I think it was the same day, there was a 2.4 meter tidal event, which is a pretty high tide for there. At the same time, it rained, so of course the resort owner was a little concerned about what was going to happen, but with only 100 millimeters of differential needed for the opening pressure of these valves, the valves were able to open, even though it was a high tide event, and allow that water to come through. And then they came back to us afterwards. They were very excited because one of their other concerns was that they were going to get coconuts stuck in the WaStop. And we've never had that question before about coconuts being stuck in the WaStop before. But they said, no, everything was fine. We went around and we checked for the coconuts afterwards, and there was no coconuts stuck in the valves. So coconut-free WaStop. From here, let's head on over to Brisbane, Australia. A really nice city, absolutely beautiful, amazing work they've done on the South Bank there to make it a really nice area to spend your time in. However, it is a tidal river, and it starts also a long way inland. So if there's a very, very heavy rainfall event and storm events and so on, it can cause major amounts of water to come down through this river. And both in 2011 and 2014, they did suffer from major flooding. One of the events, they actually had to let a dam go upstream because it was at its critical level. And of course, when that water hit Brisbane, it happened to be at the same time as a high tide event, Murphy's Law. The beautiful city was then inundated by water. There was major, major flooding all over the place there. It was a complete disaster. After that event, Brisbane City Council went through and did an investigation to work out where they needed to put valves to try and protect the most vulnerable parts of the city. And they did a test with a whole bunch of different valves to see what was going to work best. And in the end, they went with mainly WaStop on their critical infrastructure here. And they went, one of the biggest valves that we put in here was two 1.8 meters side-by-side valves here. And this is going into a box culvert and allowing that flow just to come through when there's a major rainfall event, and obviously stop that tidal river inundating the residents behind, but also being able to stop if there's even higher river events. I've got big stop banks here. But on this installation, we actually also put in 4 smaller valves. And the reason why we did this was because the City Council were a little concerned that there was going to be mud build-up around the front of these valves. Because it doesn't rain in Australia that often, they were worried that that mud was going to build up and make it difficult for the WaStop to open. We tried to assure them that that wasn't going to happen because of the pulsating flow, but we went ahead and put in these smaller valves down the bottom here, which actually let out the groundwater as well that accumulates behind them because they have a lower opening pressure. And this keeps the mud moving, and it also stops standing water upstream and stopping mosquitoes and so on. So they're constantly pulsating and keeping this mud that you can see on the side here, keeping that away from the front of the valve. So functions very well. Been back and looked at these valves several times, and they're just doing their job, which is great. So from Brisbane, we can head over and have a look at an installation that's actually not by the sea, but it is also somewhere that gets flooded. As you can see on the picture on the left here, this is a stormwater channel where they collect the stormwater and it flows from there out towards the sea. But the problem was here that stormwater channel, if they do get a large rainfall event, and this is a commercial area with a lot of hard surface area, so that would all run off the hard surface area and into this channel. And if that channel came up too high, that water would flow back through this head wall structure you can see on the picture on the left here, and start inundating a car park and a area of where there's a building warehouse with goods and stuff on the ground, which was not good. So simple installation. This went into new infrastructure, 2 head walls put in here, 1 on each side, and then the valves in between, dirt over the top and grassed over it, and job done. Made it very, very easy. Sorry, sticky fingers. So from here, we'll head on over to Europe. And we've obviously got a lot of installations in Europe, but I'll show you just a few from a few different countries, starting in Karlstad, Sweden. Now, 2 years ago, we had an absolutely amazing summer in Sweden, and it was really, really warm and sunny and very unlike Sweden. However, that caused the water levels to drop in a lot of the lakes and the rivers and all around. So the problem here was that there's a sewage pumping station that has an overflow that would normally be on the picture on the left here. The overflow pumping station, pumping station overflow would normally be underwater. So any odours were contained and not able to come out into the atmosphere. But with the low water levels, obviously the pipes sticking out into open air were causing problems with odours coming out, and local residents were getting really annoyed with this. So they went and put plastic bags over the end of the pipes to try and stop the odour. Not good. Didn't work. But simply putting 2 WaStops, 1 on each of these pipes, there was 2 pipes side by side here, putting 1 into each, instantly stopped the odour coming out of these pipes. But also if they do get high water levels, it's going to stop the backflow into the pump station as well. It's a very beautiful area and very effective installation of WaStop, stopping that odour. In the Czech Republic, we've done installations in a small town with only 3,600 people. It's 280 kilometres east of Prague. Big river runs through the city, or town, and they have these tributaries, or these the stormwater canal system that links up into the river. When there is a flood in the river and the river level rises, these canals get inundated as well, and that will flow back up, as you can see on the picture on the left here, through their stormwater outfalls and flood their systems. This WaStop is installed right inside the pipe here. So there's ways of installing WaStop where you just slide it inside the pipe, and then using the little tabs you bolt back up through into the existing infrastructure. So the valve is completely hidden from view, and as you can see, the area is really nice, beautiful area. So it's lovely installation. We've done weird and wonderful installations such as this one in Malmö in Sweden. This was just recently that we got, the drawing of the chamber on the left there, and they said, well, we need to install a check valve in there. I said, well, there's not a lot of room, but a little bit of handiwork of chopping out some concrete and actually creating a smaller WaStop by shortening the length of it and adjusting the flange on it. We were able to put it down into place, so the actual final installation looks like this. It's a very nice, neat, tidy installation, and as I mentioned before, the WaStop's able to be installed in reverse. So, as in this particular application, just slid in there in reverse and bolted on. So from here, we're going to head over to the Middle East and Asia, and we'll start off with an odor prevention application in Qatar. In Qatar, they don't have a whole lot of rain, so the stormwater applications are fairly limited there. However, they do have a lot of problems with H2S in their sewer system. And with too much H2S in the sewer system, the odour was able to get back up through their sewer chambers and sewer system and into this particular hotel, the Torch Hotel. And you can imagine checking into a hotel and the first thing you do is you go into your room and, it smells like rotten eggs. Not particularly pleasant. So just a few installations of WaStop and critical points here stop that odour problem. And that's actually an application we've done a lot of in the Middle East in particular, with high levels of H2S. We have different membranes depending upon what the application is, and for these high levels of H2S, we have a special membrane that is very resistant to the corrosiveness of that gas. So we've also done an odour prevention application in Saudi Arabia. This is a sewer dumping station where they're dumping the sewer from these trucks in through the through the pipes and then down into the wastewater treatment plant through these holes that you can see on the picture on the left. On the right, this is post-installation. We have a T-structure allowing the pumping to go down through the T-structure that has a WaStop in it, allowing that flow to go down, but stopping the odours from coming back up. Extremely simple, extremely effective installation. So to look at something a little bit different, we have done some installations in a shrimp farm in Madagascar. In Madagascar, there is it's quite common to have these shrimp farms. As you can see on the picture on the right there, from the shrimp farms, they have a release of the water going out into the sea. And on the picture on the right, you can see the edge of the coast just right on the left-hand side of the picture. The problem with the shrimp farms and these overflows that are going out into the sea is that they had issues with crabs going back up the system and eating their shrimp, which was not good. And then the picture on the left, you can see one of the original flap valve structures that they had in place there. And obviously with the flap valves, they open and close, and they might get stuck a little bit open, allowing those crabs to go back up. So with the WaStop in there, it only opens to let that flow through. And when the flow is going through, there is a higher velocity of water than coming out of a flap valve because of that pulsating flow. And that therefore deters the crabs and stops them going back up the system there. So the shrimp farm can safely produce 5,000 tons of shrimp a year and do a very good job of it. They don't get eaten by crabs. So from Madagascar, we'll head to Malaysia, where we've done a project, or been part of a project called the River of Life project. The River of Life project was launched in 2012 to beautify the whole area around the river, clean up the river, make it more livable, build office buildings and residents and so on. And their aim is to have 27,000 new employment opportunities in the area and have 35,000 residents. But to do that, obviously, they had to make sure that there wasn't going to be any flooding. So you can see here two of the 45 valves that we put in here. The big one is a 1.8 metre valve, and the little one is a 1 metre valve going in. And they really boasted with this installation because they said the installation took just 7 minutes. What they meant was 7 minutes from the back of the truck to actually having the valve in place. It wasn't bolted in by that time, but still pretty quick. As long as you've got the measurement of your pipe right, it'll just slide in and bolt on. Very, very simple. We did a project in Cambodia as well, where we've installed 60 WaStop valves for the airport runoff. So when it's a rainfall event and the rainwater is needing to be led off the runway, it comes down and goes eventually through these WaStop valves that you can see on the right-hand side here. PVC valves that they've just put into their PVC runoff pipes. But it's going into these ditches and these storage areas. And if they get over full these storage areas, they don't want that water to come back and start backing up on the runway again, of course, because it's one of the busiest airports in Cambodia. So they definitely don't want to have that closed. They've done a lot of renovations in that particular airport in 2006 and again in 2017, which is when they put in these valves here. So one final application is a very odd one in Sweden. It's a place called Solberga, and it's actually a prison. The area was previously famous for King Gustav, who used to stop there when he was going to visit the silver mines back in the 1500s. After the silver mines stopped being active, the area was then turned into a military training area, and part of these buildings were built for that. After that, they turned into a mental hospital, and then following that, they turned this whole area into a prison. And it is a Class 1 prison, which is the highest security prison that we have here in Sweden. And in 2007, they converted it, with now having 264 prisoners and 300 staff working there. Now, we got a call from the prison asking if we'd done acoustic testing on the valves, which was not a question we've had before. So they asked if they could buy one to be able to do some testing, and they did that. Following the testing, they bought a whole bunch of valves of us. So we actually had to ask them, so tell us about the application. Are you trying, to stop sewer or stormwater? No, they said. The problem that we've got is the prisoners are talking to each other, which confused us even more. But then they went on to explain that the prisoners were actually siphoning the water out of the toilets to be able to communicate through the sewer lines. Very, very odd or inventive or something. But the WaStop installed in the sewer lines just broke those sound waves enough to be able to stop the prisoners talking to each other. Kind of bizarre. So that's all I've got for you today. That's the installations of WaStop around the world, just a bit of a touch on each one. If you have any questions or any thoughts, just get in touch with me via email or on the chat, which is live on our website, or contact your local WaStop supplier, who you can find on our website as well. And as I said, we've got plenty more webinars coming up, so just drop in to join us anytime you like. Thank you very much. Have a good day and keep safe.